Are we ready? Sorry, the camera's rolling.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Open Spaces meeting begins. Apologies for absence and reasons given, please.
Dan Taylor, due to family issues. Could I have a proposer, please? Thank you. Seconder.
You all agree?
Yep.
Brilliant, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. You all agree?
Yeah,
Yeah, second. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to sign?
Yes, please. Permission there, please. Sign and date. First, and sign and date.
I don't get a fancy folder. I just get them given to me.
It has been noted, you will get a fancy folder.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. Anybody can declare an interest through the meeting if you don't do it now. Pecuniary or non-pecuniary. I shall declare an interest in item 77, please. Anybody else? No? Okay, great. So, item 70, clerk's report, please.
So we had a report that the siren wasn't working in Carter's Park that alerts people to leave the park 10 minutes before locking up. I don't know if you want me to put it as an agenda item for next time as to whether we need one at all, or there has been a suggestion of maybe the locking up service having an air horn that they can sound 10 minutes before, but I can put it as agenda item for next time. Councillor S. Hutchinson and myself went to Park Road Cemetery today and had a look at some of the trees, because we've had an issue, well, several complaints about overhanging trees, so we've looked at that, so that will be in your programming meeting. And also about some earth that's been left at the corner of the cemetery, and assume its youths have been picking it up and throwing it on the gravestones and making them all dirty and muddy. And Battlefield Lane rubbish pile, we've had somebody who has spotted an individual dumping rubbish up there and burning as well.
Okay.
That's my bit.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Carter's Park update. Has anybody got an update on Carter's Park?
Can we start with the siren, maybe?
Yeah.
Obviously the siren was set to go off. In our last full council meeting, we did give authority for employees access to make sure that the siren was set, which was any employee, like you and yourself and Jan. Would that resolve that issue?
No,
Not
the
working.
works, sorry,
It's not working, is it?
no, the works park cemetery managers looked at it today and it's passed its sell-by.
Oh. Are they expensive doing
Personally, I don't see the need,
that?
because the contractor does do a sweep of the park prior to locking, so it is, we never used to have it previously. Yes,
I
we've
don't know
had
how
one.
long we've had
We've
it.
had it for quite a few years, but prior to that there was never anything, and I think, you know, if we're not getting any issues now while it's not going off, then I think we probably review it in a few months' time and see if there have been any issues
Again.
again.
People ready.
And then if we need to, we'll have to budget for putting something in again.
Do we know how long it's not been working? A few days?
I think it's probably about 3 weeks.
So I think we would have
weeks.
known if there was an issue by now.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say, I think it's safe to say that we monitor it. I don't think an air horn, blasting that around is more antisocial than anything else. We'll probably just leave it and review it
I
at
think
next
so.
meeting.
Anything else for Carter's Park?
Yeah, one other one, with regard to the inclusive play equipment. I have made an appointment with a company to come out to start the process of looking at what can be offered, and so we can get some quotes in so that I can then start the process of the grant applications. So one is coming on the 4th of October, so I'll let them come first and get an idea, and then I can go out to others and get like for like.
And you know what space?
Yeah, I know the
Yeah.
space, I know what we're looking basically for, and then we'll just sort of try and tweak it to suit the other contractors as well, so that they're doing pretty much like for like.
Brilliant, thank you very much. That's great. Anybody else got anything for Carter's Park? No.
Oh yes, there was the tree that was reported in the dog run,
Yes.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
which I did do a quick Google, and basically it needs to come down, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So we need to get some quotes in for that
Yeah,
to happen.
before it affects other trees.
Yeah.
So it's quite important.
Have we got an agreed contract for that kind of work?
No.
Do you know Will the tree man?
We put it out to tender.
Because he done work for us and he's very good and takes all his rubbish away.
So that's something we'll have to definitely look at. Okay. Right, Netherfields update, because obviously we've had a couple of things we need to sort out with Netherfields. Most importantly is getting some signs took down, which shouldn't be there. So I can get that done.
I think we need to review all of them everywhere,
I think we
to
do.
be honest. And if it is just a matter of blanking out the bits that are
On the
not
big main
required,
sign.
we
yeah.
do need to be doing that.
The big main sign we can blank out, but the ones what apply with the gate
Yeah.
need removing.
I thought we have talked about this
Yeah.
before, so
Yeah.
it needs putting on
Well,
the
that can be
red
put
list.
onto the
Work
list of
schedule.
actions.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And also, while I was having a look around the other day, I don't know if the holes were dug in preparation for the next
Yes,
piece
there
of
were.
equipment,
Yes, there were.
but I kept them.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've been there a little while.
Yeah, they have, and I will be, when we have our next scheduling meeting, I'll be talking about when that's likely to happen.
It's like,
Because once we've got the new member of staff on board, then that could be scheduled for,
sooner than
say,
later.
yeah, and get it in before the winter months.
If that's not due to be scheduled this year, I think we need to just fill the
Yeah.
holes in
Yeah,
for
definitely.
temporary,
Yeah.
please. Okay. Right, cemeteries update. To agree the location of a bench in Park Road Cemetery. So is this the,
Bench that keeps getting removed, isn't it?
yeah,
Having had a look around the cemetery last weekend, it's not just that bench. We need to be looking at all benches, because the issue with the dirt being thrown onto particular graves, there is a bench right near that grave, which obviously the family have had permission for, but it's attracting a particular group of youths at the moment, because it's right in the back corner, away from everybody. So they're sitting down there. When I went down to my father's grave 2 weeks ago, in the early evening, they were all gathered there. They'd got the bikes strewn everywhere. They'd had a nice little picnic and they'd left rubbish everywhere, and then they were urinating in the corner.
goodness, we can't
So-
say take the bench out, can we?
Well, I think you need to relocate, where possible, to areas whereby it's still accessible to the family, if at all possible, but it doesn't encourage antisocial behaviour, because that, unfortunately, I understand why people want a bench near their loved one's grave, fully get that, but then if other people are using that for other purposes, then that's having a knock-on effect on those people when they're then going to visit their graves. They're finding that there's things happening to the grave that
Yeah.
they're not
So we need to make
expecting.
a list of all our
Yeah,
benches
and
within Park Road.
Look at where they could potentially go within a reasonable distance, but probably a little bit more of a prominent area whereby people would see what's going on a bit more.
Did we have any contact with the family with the bench which was sitting on?
Yeah, it was on the sporting documents.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Sarah.
I think Isabel's got a good point there. These benches are put there in memory of, and the thing is, most people actually do use them, so they're not insular as in they need to be absolutely at point of said grave. And it's such a lovely tribute to somebody, and then to think that people are going and doing, as Isabel's described, makes the place actually very unpleasant to visit. So I'm sure if we worked with them quite openly about it, they would
Explain what was happening.
they would understand and allow us to relocate them into more open areas so that that kind of behaviour, especially the wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, the other issue is with particular ones, if they are on areas that have been reserved by other people, you know, they're not buried there yet, but they can be at any point.
Yeah.
So we need to find somewhere that is a logical place for them to go, whereby it's not then encroaching on the ground.
This is what we spoke about, wasn't it?
So I think any families that we can get in touch with, if we can then work with them and find a suitable place that they are happy with and we're happy with, then I think that's the way to go.
I think definitely, especially if that's what's happening. They got seen about for a few days.
Yeah, well, they were down there,
Yeah,
had a lovely time.
Brilliant, thank you very much for that. Are you okay with that? So are we agreeing locations at the minute, or we're going to work with, because obviously on the agenda it's agree the location of benches.
I think it's
We need to work.
It's that one bench that Jen had on the drive that we're trying to
It's
agree.
the one that is.
I think we need to
Yeah.
look at it with the families and then agree a
If
suitable
we're looking at two, we
location.
look at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just the one, we need to look at everything.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay, so.
Do you want to amend to agree
Yeah,
to
we're not talking about a bench now.
so
Of benches.
Yeah.
But we can't agree on the location tonight
No.
until we have corresponded.
If you amend it to discuss the location of the benches and then you
Liaise
agree the
with the
amendment,
families.
then pass it and then liaise with the families.
Thank you.
location could, right, so could benches.
I'll propose
I'll second the amendment to discuss the location.
Is everybody happy with that?
that.
Yeah.
Okay. To discuss and agree a plan for the maintenance of Park Road Cemetery. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, we've come up with some plans before.
Yeah, B and C have basically been replicated. It was just the way I worded it, and Randy then put them on twice. But so B and C are basically the same thing. It's really a matter of having had a good walk around it and spent quite a long while in there. Everywhere needs a massive overhaul.
It does.
There is lots of graves that are completely covered by bushes, trees, and some of them are very old graves, but some of them, one in particular I found was 2014, and yes, it's accessible, but it's not an easy accessible. And then there was some in the 1960s. Well, those family members are still visiting because there's still flowers on the graves. So it's about having a major cutback of everything, which, as you remember, Rachel, this was spoken about many years ago, well, not that many years ago, and it was decided that we were going to maintain it because we gave the public the chance to say whether they wanted it as wild or maintained. They wanted it maintained, and we split it into quarters, didn't we? And it was meant to be on a rolling programme. Well, we did one quarter, well, we've already done the whole cycle now, and we're back to that quarter, but the other quarters have not actually been tackled. So we're now in the position that we were back then, in probably actually worse than we were back then, because there's a lot of work to be done in there.
Instead of like the quarter situation, we need to prioritise the work that's in there. I mean, obviously we know with the stump what's over, major project, that needs sorting out. Then we're looking at clearing the graves, and then having a tidy up. I mean, we know there's rubbish down there. We know there's burning piles down there. They need tidying up. So I think if we can prioritise the stump, clear the graves, because the holly's growing out of graves left, right and centre, all over the place, which would be easy to sort with a bit of time.
Personally, I think that through the winter, certainly when we've got our new member of staff up and running, that should be a major project for him to get his teeth into and start, and he can then look at that and work all the way around the cemetery. I mean, we have got the stump agenda for further down, and I think the cemetery and parks manager has come up with an idea of how that could be tackled. It's going to be at least a two-man job, at least. So as the new member of staff is going to be starting pretty swiftly, they could be tasked with at least starting to cut back a certain area immediately and get cracking with that. And then when they've got time free, then they could then tackle the stump together and work through that, because it does need a major overhaul.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, not apart from the earth mound, what's been mentioned this evening, there's another one. You know, there's all these bits just all over the place in there. You know, I don't know if the things what were dumped under that tree have been removed. So I want it to stop being a dumping ground. We've got 2 trailers dumped under a tree, a bench. It needs a good tidy up. So I'll set a hand up.
Yeah, so that's what I was resting. Obviously we're coming into that time of year as well, where the holly cutters come approaching us. So with these ginormous bushes that are covering some stones, surely they can chop all them back and not just pick the holly where they want to?
Because the tender's for 2 years, isn't it? That was 3.
Yes, it's for 3.
3, yeah. So he's got another year, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, they will come and they will do it, but again, they're not going to cut it back anywhere near as drastically as it needs cutting back. It needs a lot, but they'll just take the good stuff off that they want for the reeds, but this needs a major hack back.
So my point was, when it's about now, sort of October, November time, isn't it, when they take it?
Yeah, not until
November.
Is it November? Oh, okay. It was just my question would be, well, they can help us with that cause if we're directing them in that way. But
the other issue that we then have to consider is, if we're going to be doing a lot of major cutting back, is how we're going to get rid of all the stuff that we're cutting back. Personally, I think you're going to have to chip it and then spread it in the area where you've cleared so that it's a mulch.
Isn't that what we've got up for sale at the moment?
It is, but it's not efficient method of doing it with the machinery that we've got. I mean, we'd have to look at the costs of hiring in or whatever, or you're going to have the issue that you're going to have to chop it all up. You can transport it, but you can't burn it elsewhere. It would have to be burnt on site if it's going to burn it, which is not a practical thing to do. There's an awful lot that's going to have to be done. And if you're going to just transport it to another site, all you're going to do is end up with massive piles of rubbish. So to me, chipping it would make the most sense, because then you've got a lot of good mulch that you could put in your areas, and it would just keep it all nice and neat and tidy.
Yes, Carol?
When Will the tree man did our trees, when he did the assessment of the garden, he's noticed we got a lot of, we had a lot at the back of the garden. It was full of stuff that we cut off, all the shrubs and things that mums and that. He chipped all of that for us and included it in the price and took all the chippings away.
Yeah.
Don't know whether it's just an idea.
I mean, we could hire a chipper ourselves and just chip
Mm.
it and put it on site. There's things we'll have to discuss with the parks team.
Yeah.
Compare best we go about that.
It's all, if we're going to go down that route and chip it, we might be able to, via social media, get rid of bags of it, because people might want it themselves. So
With
they
it
can't.
being a lot of green chipping, not really suitable for sale.
Because it grows, doesn't it?
If it was a lot more wood, yeah, then possibility, but because a lot of it is holly and buddy and all sorts, isn't it? So it's a possibility. Okay. So we discuss and agree a plan. So the plan is
Start tackling an area at a
Yeah.
time and concentrate on that area, get that done, then move on to the next area and aim to get as much done through the winter months as possible.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
okay. Second. All agreed? Yeah. Thank you. To agree and to well, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
Can we
same
just
thing.
merge them two?
Yeah, I've done
Thank you very much. And to agree a solution for the fallen tree stump for Park Road Cemetery. So we have an idea.
Yeah, the cemetery and parks manager has come up with a solution in that obviously you need to trim away as much of the root as possible and then try and release as much of the dirt as possible. But it is, when we had a look around there, the hole is pretty much filled now at the back of it. So it's not, nobody's going to trip or fall or whatever, but it needs tidying up, sorting out, and then obviously all of the gravestones that have been affected need sorting out. So it's, yes, it is a bit of major work, but it's not as bad as it was because the hole, it has gradually sunk back in, and you're never going to get it to go back in the hole.
No.
It's just not going to do it. So you may as well leave it in situ, but tidy it, sort it out, and then put the stones back where they need to be.
I mean, we've got some earth kicking about the cemetery. We can
Yeah.
put it in the hole.
So he has come up with a plan, and I think we need to discuss that in more detail. Again, when you get your new member of staff, they can have a brainstorm together and come up with a proper solution. So that's why I'm suggesting that takes a little bit of a back burner just for the time being. It is still a priority, but at least we can task the new member of staff of starting on the cutting back whilst they're coming up with their actual solution to
I
that
can understand that, but I
situation.
would like to get the gravestones sorted out because obviously
Yeah.
I find this really disrespectful.
Yeah.
So it is my personal opinion. I'd like it sooner than later.
It can still be made soon.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to be a way in the distance,
No.
but we do need to look at exactly. They need to be working together on it, don't they?
Exactly, yeah. That's it. And he's got new ideas.
Yeah.
So we agree the solution is that let the guys talk,
Yeah.
come up with some ideas.
And then present it hopefully at our next meeting.
Brilliant. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Proposal?
Stephen, I'll second that.
Agreed.
Right, to agree to instruct the contractor to start roof repairs. So the services is chapels. We've got an update, have we? Brilliant.
Yes.
That says it all.
Yes, obviously following on from our full council meeting, where I put out a plea for district council to actually respond to us. We did get a response the very next day, which is a miracle. But basically they have now confirmed in writing that we do not need listed building consent to do the work that we are planning to do. Which is exactly what we needed, because obviously if it's not in writing, we don't want to start unless we've got that. So we have now got that in writing. I have spoken with the contractor and asked the question as to A, are they still interested, and B, what is the lead time that they're looking at for supplies, etc.
This is our original
This
contract.
is the original contractor. And they have come back and said that the lead time for the slates is only 2 weeks, which is less than it was originally. And they would need approximately a month before they got the staff and manpower to do it. So they would be able to start it fairly soon, which means that you would at least get the bulk of it done before the real bad weather came.
Which was our concern,
Which
because
is-
we were
yeah.
looking at sheeting it down
Yeah.
and all sorts of things.
Now, on the sheeting aspect, I did contact 3 companies about that. One went and had a look and then came back and said that they were concerned that sheeting was not the solution, because there was nowhere really to attach the
Okay.
sheeting to, and the wind would get under it and you would still have it, pretty much the same problem, you'd still be getting water in. So they wouldn't have recommended it anyhow. So there isn't really another solution other than trying to keep the water out as best you can over the winter. If you weren't going to do the work, you could create a false canopy over the top, but then it's going to be even more costly because you're going to have to scaffold it and everything. So if we are able to get on with it, I would suggest we get on with it. It's budgeted for this year.
I'll propose that. Yeah.
A second?
Yeah.
Yeah. Get on with it.
All agreed? Yeah. So, how can you instruct?
We've just got to post it to the tenders page first, government tenders page, but that can run concurrently with
It's just a process we have to go through because it's a large contract, so you have to put it out there for other people to.
So we've got to wait to hear from other people then, or
No, it's only a very short time frame, so
what happens if we do?
if you do. We haven't instructed the other person yet, so if
Right,
the
so
price
if you
is- if you get a better price or whatever, then it's up to you what you do, ultimately.
So if you could please put it on, sorry, Steve.
I just wanted to make a comment for the purpose of the minutes, that wonderful building that we looked after, it's essentially we crack on. If nobody else does bother with the tender, as in when it goes on the tender page, we just need to get that
Do it.
sorted. Let's get on with it and do it and not worry about if someone comes in, we'll deal with it. The most important thing is that building,
Mhm.
and then we get on with it.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're happy to get it put on the tender site?
I think set it all up.
Yeah, I'll set up the account ready, so.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Allotments update. Well, a bit different then. To agree to the works required for Dogs Road allotment roadway. We've had it's been done apparently. Steve?
Yeah, I got approached by one of the allotment holders saying thank you for sorting the roadway out. And I went, oh. So it looks like the repairs, or it is now a lot safer than it was when we site visited. And therefore I think we should, have you been down there? Yeah, so if you agree it's safe, we should leave it be and monitor it.
Do we thank the person in question who's done it?
Well, I don't know who's done it.
And I did go down and have a look at that, and also looked at Plank Hook, because I wanted to compare to see what the state of that roadway was, because in my mind, if one set of allotments roadway is perfectly fine, and yet another set had been in a really bad state, that says that it's the usage of that roadway and not the weather conditions or anything like that, because clearly if one set of allotments is fine and another is
Plank
not.
Hook was a good road to start.
Well, yes, but yeah, it gives you a bit of an indication. But really, Dog Drove is certainly a lot better than it was before. Winter weather, it's going to deteriorate again, so it may be something that we have to keep monitoring, but it is what it is. It's a farm track, that's what it is. Going to be a made-up roadway.
You see, I mean, this one down at Plank Hook is a proper roadway. Oh, great, that's done. Thank you. So, discuss and agreeing to increase allotment rents. Dan's done some work on this. So, do you want to quickly brief us?
Brandy.
Brandy, sorry. The office.
Yeah, so you have, under the Allotment Act 1950, you have to give, body read it,
Yeah,
12 months.
yeah. So you have to give 12 months notice, but which has to, the increase must start on the 1st of September in any year, but you have to give 12 months notice, which means that we've missed, so we would have to increase it on the 1st of September 2023.
So, but we can start looking at percentages and bits and pieces.
Yeah, but you've got to make that decision before next August.
Yeah. So,
We've definitely got to look at them all because, you know, there are ongoing costs that are now mounting up.
yeah.
And yes, we have to let the allotments at a reasonable rate. That's part of the agreement, but those, if we're getting issues not caused by us but caused by the tenants, which is clearly what's happening in lots of the allotments at the moment, not particular places but across the board, then we've got to have some way of managing to recoup some of that cost so that we can keep maintaining it to the standard that it needs to be.
Yeah, so we've got to look at the different rents for the different areas
Yeah.
and come up with a plan. So, I haven't even got a list of the different prices for the different areas. So I think that's something we need to look at and then decide.
Can I have a proposer and a seconder for that, please?
So what are we agreeing on?
We're agreeing to look at them all and the cost being, look at the percentage of an increase from the 1st of September 2023.
So,
Which is not exact, do you want to change the agenda item to?
My personal view, would it be better to defer it
Mhm.
to the next meeting, so
So
by next meeting,
Yeah.
we've got all of the prices, we can then agree what percentage, we can give that notice even now, but for 2023, so we can actually cover it better by I don't like deferring it, but I think it's only fair that we probably do. We've got a duty to keep them affordable,
oh gosh.
so if we can bring that back onto the next agenda, I'd be happy to vote that motion and as it stands.
Is it possible to get all the figures for each section, please? Thank you. Okay, everybody happy with
Right.
that?
Everybody agreed with that?
Is that for the deferral?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, to discuss Battlefield's allotment now the remedial work has taken place. Did everybody see the stuff what came through?
Yeah, interesting read.
Definitely in the wrong job. Anybody's opinion? I know what mine is.
Yes, it's a lot of money. And I would not suggest that we are going to be doing all of that in one go at all, or if we do it all of it at all. My suggestion would be the area that we use, the triangle piece, because that is the biggest amount of money, isn't it? That we can stop using for the time being until we are happy that it is completely and utterly safe. So we can go out and get prices from other companies. You don't have to just get one price, but stop using it, end of, because there's no need to use it. We only use it to dump stuff, basically, don't we? What I would suggest we need to potentially budget for is to get the allotment that was affected, the one where the asbestos was found, get that done to the specification that they're saying. So you're basically digging down and making sure that absolutely everything is gone. You don't need to bring in new topsoil. There's no need to do that.
Do we just do samples to see what it says?
Well, they've already done samples, haven't they?
It was fine.
Yes, but they're saying those 3 samples are fine. If you are wanting to make sure that particular area is absolutely fine and clear, then you're going to have to take all the soil, the topsoil away, and then down to the level that they said, the same as you would do on the building site if you were doing that, and deal with it in that way. Because logically, yes, they're saying that it's okay to the degree that they've said, but if you start letting that allotment again, and then a year down the line we have another incident where somebody's dug up a bit more of stuff, then we've failed in our duty, haven't we? So that would be my priority, is to look at that, get another second opinion if that's what you want to do, but prioritise that one so you can get it let again.
Yeah. So,
Is this the George Farmer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if I can disclose a pecuniary interest in
Yes,
in there, please. I would agree with what Isabel's saying, but also we have done extensive work down there to try and eradicate. There's very little trace elements that were not found to be too or dangerous or whatever. At this point, I feel that we should really let the George Farmer Trust know the results, what work we've already carried out at our cost, showing that we've taken the ownership of it, and maybe take a bit of direction from them, because it's a small piece of land. And we have tried to exacerbate the asbestos problem, and ask them if they require us to continue with further works on there, and then at least we get an answer definitive from them, so that we can then include it in our budgets, because we're obviously working on budgets now, but we'll know where we stand with them, because I feel that as a council we've actually took ownership of the issue, we've tackled it, it's cost us money, but quite rightfully we should have looked after them, but it's got to a level now where it's a isolated area that we might not use potentially.
have they got a meeting soon?
October.
October.
But I think if we write to them with a full update, tell them what we've done, where we've got to, they might say, actually, isolate that area and continue using the rest, and thank you for, because it's been a hard task for us to deal with. But I'd like their input. I don't know
No, it's a good
what
idea.
people think.
So, obviously that will need to come by the office, if you could let the George Farmer Trust know. So,
So would we have to fence that area off then, if we were not using it, or would it just be left?
just leave it.
Okay.
If I can just do non-pecuniary interest, John, because I forgot to do that.
Yeah.
I've done that one. And yeah, I mean, I think our meeting is the 6th
It's early in
of
October.
October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not long.
So
So
get the
we
info
just
out
do,
now.
send the report as is
Mm.
to them, and I'll make sure it's an agenda item.
Because they're obviously aware of what we've been doing.
Oh yeah, they've had the previous report, they've seen everything so far,
Okay.
and then if they then see this report, and then we'll go from there. But in the interim, we have got to make a decision ourselves about the piece of land that we use and our staff use as our duty of care. Do we allow them to continue to use that, or are we saying it's out of bounds until further notice? We would have to make that decision.
Yeah. Did you want to?
Agree to that tonight, or?
I think we need to make,
Yeah,
once,
because obviously there's quite a lot of stuff down there now.
I think, can I make a suggestion that we let George Farmer meet beginning of October. Our full council meeting will be the week later. If we agenda it for that meeting, to discuss our next steps,
Yeah.
and then we can decide what we're actually going to be needing to do.
So at the moment, we advise our staff not to use the area until we know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think you're
I think
right.
we
You're quite
should.
right. Yeah, I think you're quite right. I mean,
That's a duty of care to them.
Yeah. and at the end of the day, it's there's other areas for them to use, and it's not like they're just using that. So I will propose that. We do that.
Okay.
Second.
Please, yeah. Thank you very much. Nature Reserve update. So, still waiting for the duck machine to in situ. Hopefully soon.
Is it not back up?
I haven't been down there this week. Have we had any news it's in?
No.
I'll go and check tomorrow.
Okay.
It has been collected to go up.
I was down there last week, I didn't see it.
No, it wasn't collected until the end of last week.
Oh, okay.
So
hopefully
it
soon.
may be in,
Brilliant.
but I will check tomorrow.
Thank you. The officers ordered some more duck food. So, any more update on the allotment, Stephen?
Allotment.
Yeah.
Allotment.
I've had 10 hours sleep in the last 2 days.
Fish, little problem. So after our last full council meeting, we did put forward to full council with regards to issuing a key to Waddles Rescue, and that was agreed, but on the basis that there was still a risk element involved, but it was less than jumping the fence. So I'd like, if possible, to meet again with the rescue, to issue the key, and we can go down there, do the risk assessment, do the whole thing that's suggested by the insurers, get it signed off, give her the key, so she can carry on her wonderful work rescuing our poorly ducks. But obviously, we need to agree that as a committee.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm happy for that.
Propose. I'll second.
All agreed?
Yeah. I'll sort it out.
Thank you very much. Okay. That's it for the Nature Reserve, everybody?
Yeah.
To discuss the budget for 2022-23. Right. Where would we like to begin?
Can I start with grass cutting?
Okay.
Okay, so the idea is that we have got an in member joining the team, and obviously the employment committee, whatever they're called, have looked at other avenues and things like that. But looking at the grass cutting that's there, the items that I believe are listed on there are the tendered items, contract items. I had a quick look at them, and other than verge cutting, grass cutting was £12,953 in contract fees. Then there's also other bits and pieces, like locking up and things like that, and obviously with a full team we could look at taking back that, which saves us some more money. And looking at my rough calculations, we could actually be looking to save somewhere around 29,000 by giving works scheduled back to our team, so they're
It's a bit difficult with the locking up, getting them to come back in the evening, surely.
This is just my thoughts. I'll be finished in a second. It's only a thought. So, roughly speaking, when you take that out of the equation and salaries and stuff, there's about £10,000 saving to be made if we can come up with a solution about that. Because the locking up and the grass cutting on its own is a huge expense to the council, where we've got staff that actually can do the grass cutting.
Grass cutting, you can't do anything with just yet anyhow, because they're on a 3-year contract, so they've got all of next season. So we will need to make a decision next year for the year following. So it's really going to come into the next following year's budgeting that we're going to be looking at. But that is something that we do need to discuss it. We need to work out what is doable and what's not. because some of the areas that are contracted out are out of town, quite significantly out of town, and we haven't got the machinery to get to those areas. So it may be that we can take some back, but whatever. But we need to look at the big picture.
Yeah, I mean that was just me crunching through there, thinking about a huge saving and having a full team of staff.
It's a figure what jumps out first, isn't it?
It's one of those things where you look at it and you don't realise actually. I don't think anybody realises how much it actually costs us to keep the public areas tidy, and it then gets a little bit disheartening when you get these instances like in the cemetery and like the benches and vandalism and the trees pulled. It actually is quite upsetting at some point to think that we pay all that money out.
And time and effort.
But anyway, that was
So,
my point.
anybody else's input for the budget, please?
One little one that I did notice, and that you haven't put anything in for balloon costs, because obviously that is something that we've still got to discuss, but we do need to be putting a figure in there, because obviously we're going to be taking back some of the areas, definitely. So we got to put some money in for plants, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the main areas is going to be basically your war memorial and churchyard. That's it.
And Market Hill.
Yours.
Well, no, but it isn't, it's not ours, but my understanding was that the large planters, when they were put in under the remit that it was through grant money, and then we were meant to be maintaining.
The paperwork I saw, they are LCC. And they got a list of bits and pieces. Obviously you see they found the list of the trees what are meant to be in it. And it's for them to look after.
So be struggling to get them to
it would be nice if
So
we could
that's
find
the
something
thing.
to do it, but then hopefully with our staff that they will water and look after. So it's even more.
Obviously we've got the public meeting February. Hopefully we're going to get a load of people that want to steer a group to keep it independent, so we may not have to budget too much, but it's better to have a backup in there just in case they don't. With the momentum that was building, it would seem that the people will come forward and want to do things. Obviously if they don't, then we will need to step into those areas that we're responsible for and need to start with anyway, won't we? And obviously any planters and things that are left about, whether they're LCC in bloom or whatever, they will need removing if they're not going to be planted because they just get full of weeds, and that would look even worse.
Yeah, okay. No, so do we put in a little budget of 500? Sorry,
Can I just, it might be a silly question, but the massive greenhouses where they all prepare all of those, are they privately owned?
Yeah,
And would he still allow those to be used, do we know?
probably. I probably not. I think, it was a big part of In Bloom down there, and I think that if In Bloom's withdrawn, then I don't think that facility is, but we could potentially find. I do know that the Crown donated a polytunnel on some land to In Bloom, which was never used because of its location.
Right.
So if sorry,
it wasn't donated to In Bloom.
well, I read an article that said it was.
Yes, I bet I haven't declared an interest on this one.
Right.
They would grow plants for In Bloom in there, and any member of the public could donate plants and grow them on there and then give them to In Bloom.
Because obviously I was going to come and say we could ask them
And
to
it
store
is
it
a
there,
Because the only reason I ask is, I don't know whether they still have them, but the academy used to have, they haven't got their agricultural side anymore. Okay, thank you. Right.
but we can cross that bridge after the public consultation, can't we? Yeah.
So do we come up with a figure tonight?
I'd put 1,000 in.
You need at least 1,000,
Yeah.
I'd say, for the areas that we know we're going to have to do, because you've got quite a large area there that you're doing in the churchyard, and whatever type of planting you put in there, it's going to cost some money.
You've not just got the tubs, you've got the hanging things now, and all the bits around the war memorial.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that around the war memorial, we can think of alternatives, you know, because obviously when you look at it now with all in full flower, if the vision of the memorial is that you can see it and it's shrouded with bloom, but it's got all roses around the bottom, which is absolutely stunning when they've been trimmed down and they've grown up and you've got this flurry of colour around the bottom. So maybe we're not needing to concentrate on filling those sort of things, but again, it's this public meeting where we can
Different
these
people have
decisions,
different ideas.
I think, you know, people will like probably sustainable planting and
Mm.
perennials and things as opposed to, you know, what we see. I'm hoping the whole thing is going to come out of this meeting. I'm so looking forward to what the public want, because it's them that are driving it. And I think if we put £1,000 reserve in our budget for fallback money, let the public meeting go ahead and see what comes out of it. If we're pleasantly surprised and we get people that are brilliant, that's all we can ask.
So agreed, £1,000 put into the budget for the employee.
Yeah. Agreed.
All cows.
Opposed?
Second.
Yeah.
Agreed. Anything else that stands out from the budget? Any more input? Is that a hand up?
Yes, it is. I just wanted to point out that you've got chapel repairs in 13.5, because when we prepared this, we didn't know whether we were going to have to sheet it. So theoretically, you've got, what, 12,000 there that doesn't need to be in.
I don't know.
We don't.
I think you need,
Keep
whatever
something
you
in
need
there.
to leave some budget in the chapel repairs, because my understanding is that the trust, if they're going to be putting in another application, it should be going in next month. So they will not know for a while anyhow. If they don't get it, then we are going to be in the rounds of, we're going to be doing the whole maintenance of that building for.
So, I mean, I didn't hear anything back about the last application.
They haven't, they didn't put another one in for them. What happened is that the application that they had planned to put in, or they put in pre-COVID, everything was put on hold and they were told that it would then need to be reassessed later on, and then they were told that they would have to put in a new application because the criteria then changed because of COVID. And this is the new application that they're due to put in. So that is not happening, and my understanding is it's not happening until at least October. So they're way off from knowing yet.
Oh, they've started their meetings again yet?
I don't know. So chances are, you know, if they may decide not to put in that application if they can't meet the criteria. So if they can't meet the criteria, then they're not going to get the grant.
Are they
So
going to
therefore
start?
it's going to come back on us anyhow, so we do need to keep some money in there.
Most definitely, but I'd like them to start corresponding with the Office of Plans.
Yeah.
So that we all know what's going on with our building.
Can I just then suggest that we write to them, John writes to them, and just ask them for an update, and then we've got it in black and white from them, and as Isabel's always been good enough to give us the
I know,
updates.
everything's
But just send them a quick letter to their chair and ask them for an update as to where they are and what their plans are. Because when you think about it, if we get this, if this roof repair goes ahead, which will be the most brilliant thing in the world, because it's been the water that's causing the damage, once we've got a watertight building and we've still got £13,000 left in the budget for chapels, that could go to sorting the floor out, and then there's having some kind of facility within there. You know, there's some exciting things that we could look at then future planning for that. So absolutely behind needing somebody in there for the chapels.
So are we keeping the figure as it is, 13?
I think so.
We leave it for now, because obviously we're still in the early
We don't-
stages. We can adjust it.
Is it February we put the screws on and everything is tightened
No,
up?
it's January.
Oh, is it January? Oh,
Which will
right.
probably be brought forward to December this time.
So, okay, is everybody happy with that?
And did you want to put anything in for projects at this stage, or did you want to wait?
If we wait until I get my figures back, because then we will need to put a figure in to be able to get grants.
Yeah.
Because most of them, I will start looking at what their criteria is, but they specify a percentage that you have to put towards the cost. So I can be working on that between now and when we actually have to
Mm.
do these figures properly.
I can agenda it for the next
I was
meeting.
going to say
we can
agenda
read
again,
this,
What
re-agenda
have we got on
again.
local trees? I can't remember.
15.
15.
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, thank you.
But we haven't used that.
Yeah, but we've got trees come down very soon as
Yeah.
well.
The thing is, if we keep that on the agenda until we get right up to preset planning, it's a constant reminder for us from now right up to the lead up. So when we get to, as Isabel said, December, we've already got our presets sorted, which would be the first time I've ever seen it happen. So well done, everybody, for thinking about it nice and early. It's great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
There was just the beacon basket and lighting the beacon that we need some costs for.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that doesn't actually belong to the parish council basket, does it? The beacon.
It's on district land.
Yeah, and I'm sure it actually belongs to the district.
Yeah. There is, I meant to bring it tonight, but I forgot. We were given the whole documentation for the lighting of the beacon at the meeting, but it is in that documentation that you'd already saved
Yeah.
all the details. We do need to register our interest for lighting it there.
Right.
So if you go on to that documentation that you've saved, it gives you the details of what you have to submit to them. It doesn't commit yourself to it as such, but they need to register of who and what we're likely to do, and obviously then we need to then liaise with the Royal Observer Corps, which is where the information came from. But
Yeah.
I can feed that in on Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Right, discuss and agree the responsibilities of the lease of College Bank. So, obviously, I have an interest in this one, so I don't know, I can check this bit.
Well, technically no.
We just need to get some clarification, basically, on who is responsible for what. Having read the head lease and the sublease, my understanding of it is that all of the responsibilities under the head lease are then transferred to the sublease. That's my understanding of it. If that's the case, then technically, grass cutting, hedges, everything become the responsibility of the people with the sublease, which we are already cutting the grass, and we're not going to suddenly say, oh, but we're not going to do that anymore. But as we're coming up to our grass cutting tenders again and things like that, and the lease as well is also coming up for renewal.
7 years.
Exactly. So we need to understand what the responsibilities are of the existing lease and adjust our budgeting accordingly moving forward. But also, if the intention is that at the end of this lease, the football club still wish to use the area, is it necessary for us as a parish to lease direct from the Crown and then sublease it, or can that be done directly with the football club? So there's things that need to be looked at and discussed in more detail, and that we'd need some legal advice, which we did ask through Radar, but it was a bit nondescript. It didn't give us an absolute, this is what is intended.
Okay, so looking at the, there's 2 points there that Isabel's brought up. The first bit about us being the intermediary, so we're the in-between person to the football club. I would think that the football club would highly unlikely rent it direct off them, because that means that if they ever wanted to give up, they are not able to, because they are obviously committing directly with the Crown. But the header lease and the sublease should realistically be identical in word, so that the header lease would list all the responsibilities that we have, and the sublease should then, word for word, mimic and pass all of those. If we don't do that, then we need that sorting out for when that lease is renewed, because that means that we will have issues because we've not mirrored the original header lease to the sublease. So if they don't match, then obviously the football club could argue, whereas if they do match, then they have got all of the responsibilities that we would have as the owner, which would then go back to your original question about why did they not lease it directly. So there's
And
quite
it's
a
a
big
public
issue.
park for the public of the area, not just the football club.
And that this is the difficulty, and this is why
It shouldn't have been
for the
done
whole
this way.
area, it should have been. If the football club are using a particular area, then it should have been for that area, like it is in Carter's Park. So that area is what they are leasing from us.
Should
That's
have
how it
been
should have been
rented
done.
to them twice a week,
Yeah.
not a sublease.
Yeah, but they had to have a sublease because they needed that to be able to get the grant.
Could have got a grant for it,
But that's what they were told at the time, that
Yeah.
they would not get the grant if they haven't got a proper formalised lease, and they got the longevity of that lease. So that's why it happened. But it makes it difficult because obviously then it is still a public area, but the responsibilities, as I see them, the way that the sublease is written, it doesn't list every single item, but it does have the caveat there basically saying that all of the responsibilities under the head lease are then transferred to the sublease. Puts it in gobbledygook, of course, because it's lawyer speak, but that's basically, in my understanding, that's what it's saying. That's why we just need to have that clarified before we move on to whatever we needed to do, because we had the issue with hedging, didn't we? It's how far do we take it? Do we absolutely say, well, this is your responsibility, you must do it, or do we have a little bit of a leeway and say, well, if you can do this, then we'll do that. Yes, I know exactly, and it's not about we are going to insist on everything, but if it's written in the lease, then it could be interpreted to the letter of the lease if we chose to. It's about making
We've
sure.
also got down, cut the hedge as a parish council as well before.
Yes, we have done, and it's so that they know what we should be doing and vice versa. Because again, with the issue with the grass cutting, we're cutting it as a playing field, aren't we? We're not cutting it as anything other than that. If they require it to be cut to a certain standard, then there's no problem with them cutting it themselves for their area that they want to do. But we just need to make sure that it's sort of made clearer, I think, as to who is responsible for what and what we're expecting them to do and vice versa.
The money you get from the precept for College Bank, the only thing people from our village get are the maintenance of that playing field.
Yeah.
And if we stop doing that,
Yeah.
and you're giving it to the guys, they don't have to have it opened up.
No.
So therefore, as a parish council, we're taking away a public playing field because of the stupid lease what was set there. I just don't agree with it at all. Sorry, Stephen.
Obviously, because of your declaration of interest on the item, I would think this would be a perfect opportunity for us to have an official meeting with the sublet people and come up with an agreement between us to say this is a playing field which we give under the precept to the people to freely use of Holwich Bank, blah blah blah, the same as we do in Netherfield and everywhere else. What's your understanding? What are you looking after? What do you want us to look after? And we sit around the table and we make an agreement whilst that lease is. That would be a perfect.
That's what they would love.
Well, let's do it. Let's make it happen. I think.
I think that's an important point. We need to do that now as a discussion about how it's going to happen moving forward, because obviously as soon as that lease ends, we don't know whether the Crown is going to want to renew it yet anyhow, and that will come further down the line, but that lease is coming to an end fairly soon. It's not that long. So if we need to know their intentions as a tenant of us before that lease ends anyhow. So if we have discussion around, if you wish to renew your lease at this point, how would you like it to be set out this time round? Because there won't be the onus again on them to have that lease, because they won't be looking for the grant money to do what they were doing previously. So it's, do they actually want a proper sublease, or do they just want a rental agreement, or what are they actually looking for? And then we can actually have a sensible discussion about what is the best way forward when that renewal point comes.
This is it, they just want to know where they stand.
But we can't give them any hard and fast, absolutely you will be able to do this, because if Crown don't want to renew that lease with us, then that's it, unfortunately. But that's the Crown's decision and not ours.
Oh, I know.
And we don't know.
So can, obviously I've already given the clerk the contact details for the secretary anyway. So do we arrange a meeting?
Definitely, let's get it on the table, communicate with them. We've then got something to come back and talk about in our committee meeting to say, this is how the meeting went. Some of us can be present at that meeting, let's make it happen and see what those guys want down there, working together.
Yeah, and then once we've got that information, we can then approach the Crown early and say, are you likely to renew this lease with us? This is what we would like from the new lease, and this is what our subtenants would like from this new lease. And then they can be working on whatever they need to work on in the period of time, because else all of a sudden we'll get a letter saying, excuse me, this is the terms of your new lease, blah, 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 and then it'll be running around like headless chickens and trying to work it all out. If we've got a very clear plan of what we want, then we can go back to them sooner rather than later.
Do you want me to contact the landlord now?
I'll do our side first.
Yeah,
It's not due for, it's 7 years, but we started about 5 years on.
I can't remember what day
Yeah,
it was.
7 years.
just for the purpose of minutes, sorry, Jen. If we get a good working relationship with them, the Crown renew the lease with us, it's our lease, we're the head of lease, and they say, no, we're going to renew it because it's what it's there for, and then we go down the rental agreement, it's a win-win for your football club. There's no other lease to worry about, the technical jargon's all gone, we've already set a bar on what they're going to look after and what they want to meet the winner. Can I propose that myself? Because you can't. I'll propose that.
That's it.
Second, all in favour? Yeah, I've just taken the vote for you. Good. Did you keep up?
Yeah.
Bless you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The items for discussion and agenda items requests, please.
Okay, we've already got some on the way that we're going to carry on with the budget. We're going to have we'll have the nature reserve update, so it'll be general items for me, nothing specific.
Oh, yes. Can we have to agree the design of the disabled, or the inclusive swing seat?
Okay.
So that, because there were several different
Yeah.
types, weren't there? And if we can get that agreed as to what type we're looking at, then that can be actioned fairly quickly.
Okay. It's not exactly an agenda item, but I've got some things for our scheduling meeting. Okay. Do we do that later?
Do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Confirm date and venue of next open spaces meeting, please. We're here. That's the venue sorted.
4 weeks? About?
Can I just make a suggestion? This particular week, we've got meetings every single night.
Left, right, centre, yeah.
And I think we need to start doing a bit of scheduling so that we've not got everything in 1 week. Tomorrow night's meeting, really, it needs to be 2 weeks after the full council meeting, so it's only a week after the full council meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if we get that into a cycle, then really open spaces potentially could be the week after a full council meeting, so it's always on the opposite.
It would
It's
be
not
nice to get some sort of pattern.
yeah, so if we aim to do it on the week immediately after a full council meeting, that gives us the whole of the rest of the
When
month.
is your scheduling meetings?
Well, we can do them whenever.
But
Doesn't
you
matter.
need to start getting that into a pattern as well, don't you? So everybody knows where they are.
It can be done immediately after your open spaces meeting. So once we've agreed what our schedules and things are at a meeting, then we can then action that pretty much immediately for the following month.
Right, okay.
So the week after is, if it's Tuesday, it's you, Rachel, that's from, it's the 19th of October,
What day is it?
a Tuesday.
I need to bring the schedule.
Suppose the chair can let us know. You can confirm a
Think about
date.
it.
Yeah.
Do you want to go with that 19th of
Yeah,
October?
go with it at the moment, and I'll, obviously, because the new schedule kicks in a couple of weeks' time. I can't even go to the next month on this.